Jim, I keep missing you to come over. I'll do it. You also won't be for a while. I'm going away now for a few weeks. Then I come back in Mitzvah Hashem. All right. So further our questions. We covered last week and fish, frozen and fresh, can be bought in any place. Issues of canned tuna, issues of whiskey. Today our first question is, can we eat Rav Landau's hashgacha when he fired someone for wearing a yechi yarmulke? This is the question on my list today. Can we eat Rav Landau's hashgacha when he fired someone for wearing a yechi yarmulke? That is the question. I said I would answer it. I promised to answer whatever questions I could on the list. So I'll answer this question too. First, let's understand the question. What is the basis that one eats a hashgacha? What basis do you eat? Do you accept a particular hashgacha? Shochan Aruch. I mean, basically, what is a hashgacha? Hashgacha is that you have a Rav, right? You have a particular food which requires supervision, and you have a Rav that supervises to make sure that this food is kosher according to halacha, and you rely on this Rav. On the basis of that, you can eat the food. Now that's a very great generalization, because Rabbanim have got different criteria for deciding if something's okay or not. I understand that a lot of guys here, or some guys, are learning smicha. So you understand that when you learn smicha, you learn a very basic rule. And the rule is this, that in halacha, nothing is black and white. Everything is grey. Because when you ask a question, especially in kashrus, you say, is this kosher? The usual answer is, it depends. Some people, for some, it depends what level you're holding. I mean, you have Rabbanim that, give the sechsher, that level, the other level. We'll talk about that soon. But it's not a straight answer. You can't give a straight answer. Is it okay, yes or no? It's very rare that you'll have an answer like that in kashrus especially. And in halacha in general. So when you have a Rav who's giving a hashgacha on a particular item, you have a look what level you want to keep as far as a level of kashrus is concerned, and you see whether the level of this Rav is what suits you. Usually, as Lubavitchers, we go for a Rav that is going to do things in the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to do it. In other words, HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us, don't eat this type of food. That's what we want to do. We want to do what He wants. We don't want to find a situation where, yes, you can find a kula, you can find a leniency in almost everything. And you can find a leniency which somehow, according to halacha, could be permitted under such circumstances. And we don't want to live like that. We live on a different level. We live on a level where we want to do what HaKadosh Baruch Hu really wants from us. So therefore, when we're going to look for a particular hashgacha, we're going to look for a hashgacha which is going to be on a high level, so we know that that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from us. I would say, and just because I work for Rav Landau, it doesn't mean that this is a biased opinion, although some people might say it is. I would say that from my experience in the world of kashrus, Rav Landau's hashgacha is the best hashgacha in the world. There is no hashgacha that is as strict or as detailed as Rav Landau. Not necessarily strict. I mean, he doesn't necessarily say that he's doing things always l'chumra. It's not necessarily the case. But that does it, that gives a hashgacha, gives kashrus on a level that is good for everybody, that everybody can accept this level of kashrus, whether it's a person who is just starting or who hasn't really, doesn't want to keep everything to the greatest hiddur, or a person wants to keep everything to the greatest hiddur. Rav Landas Hashgacha is good for everybody. Now, so that's the first thing to look at in Hashgachas. You've got to look at the point of the issue. The reason this is the case, the reason I say this, is because under Rav Landas Hashgacha, firstly, he himself says that if he can't give a hechsher lechatchila, then lechatchila he doesn't give the hechsher. Think about it. There's nothing, it's not b'diavad. The hechsher is always lechatchila, everything. If something doesn't come up to the standards, simply one to prove it, one to hashgacha. Standard meaning goes according to Shulchan Aruch. There's a Shulchan Aruch, it says in Shulchan Aruch, do this, that, and the other. Other hechsherim don't work like that. A lot of other hechsherim round off the corners. They sort of say, okay, look, we can find a heta for this and a heta for that, and I'll give you some examples later on. And it makes a big difference. That's not what we want to do. Rav Landas Hashgacha is not like that. That's the first thing to look at. Now let's have a look at our situation here. Can we eat Rav Landas Hashgacha when you find someone for wearing a yarmulke? Firstly, I've heard the story. I checked the story. It's not exactly like that. My understanding of the story, and there was such a story. There was a person who in fact was a shoichet, and he was wearing a yarmulke and he got fired. This is all true. But, there's a saying in the world of science that there's lies, worse lies, and statistics. Now, statistics are those things that, depends on how you phrase the question. Depending on how you phrase the question, will be the result. So, if you phrase a question one way, you get one result. If you phrase the question another way, you'll get a different result. This is the same sort of thing. The story here is a bit strange. What I understand of the story was that there was a shofet who was wearing a yarmulke. The environment in which this person is wearing the yarmulke is an environment where there are a lot of Hasidim. The Shachtim, Mashgichim, the people are various groups of Hasidim, Gera Hasidim, or Vizhnitzers, or Satmars, or all sorts of Hasidim, all of whom are very frum Jews and Yirei Shamayim. They all learn and they daven and they go to mikveh and whatever, they do everything the way that they're supposed to. And he was wearing his yarmulke. And because of the fact that these other guys don't necessarily accept the concept of a yarmulke, they don't understand it, they don't accept it. So they were being antagonized by the fact that he was doing this. And so he was warned and told, please, don't wear it here at work. Don't wear it when you're here with everybody else. Wear something else. You don't have to wear your yarmulke. Wear a different yarmulke, not to antagonize other people. You're not saying they're right or they're wrong. That's irrelevant. But they are getting antagonized. Sure, you could probably sit down and explain it to them and they understand or whatever. But this wasn't doing the job. The Rebbe was always, one of the important things the Rebbe always said was, things have to be b'ofen hamiskabel, in a way that it's acceptable to people, that they can handle it. That's a very important thing. I'll tell you something else in a second. Now, he insisted. He wanted to do it anyway. He was warned again. He said, look, please don't do it. You're antagonizing people. They're getting upset. Don't do it. Just at work, wear something else. He insisted. When he was warned that if he's going to continue, then he's going to lose his job, he still insisted. So he lost his job. It wasn't because he was wearing a yarmulke. It was because he was antagonizing people around him. That might have been the tool, or that might have been the thing which was being used to do it, but that was the issue. And that's essentially the story. I remember, I suppose, to me, one of the most important things I feel that I ever heard the Rebbe say. There was there were elections in Eretz Yisrael. I don't remember what year it was, and it was at a point where one of the parties, Agudas Yisrael, was supporting
the laws of Miu Yehudi, who is a Jew. That a Jew should be only from a Jewish mother or converted according to halacha. And other parties were going against that. They wanted to have a secular kind of Judaism in Israel. And the Rebbe came out for the first time and he was very strong about it. And he said that all the Lubavitchers should support Agudas Yisrael because they're supporting the idea of Yehudi lahalacha. And the Lubavitchers went out in great force throughout all of Israel to try and get people to vote for this party, Agudas Yisrael. Agudas Yisrael lost. They missed out by a small margin. They didn't get in. Afterwards, there was a major backlash against Chabad. Very big backlash in Eretz Yisrael. When guys were going out to do mitzvah, people said, we don't want to have anything to do with you, you're just politicians, and whatever, and it was very, very negative. So people came to the Rebbe and asked him, what should we do? Here we're trying to do mitzvah, right? And we went and we did what the Rebbe said. And, we're getting a backlash now. We can't do mitzvah, we can't make Arav Yidden. The Rebbe said in Yiddish, "Du darfst sitzen und trinken a Glas Tee." You have to sit down with him and drink a cup of tea. That's what the Rebbe said. And to me, however simple that sounds, to me that was probably, in my opinion, the most powerful thing the Rebbe ever said. I think, what? Why is that so powerful? Drink a cup of tea. What's so powerful about a cup of tea? The answer is a very simple thing. The way I see it is like this. What was the Rebbe saying? I go meet a Jew. The Rebbe to me was explaining what Chabad is all about with that statement. I go meet another Jew. I want to put film on him. He says, forget it, I'm not talking to you, you're a politician. I start to talk about something else. I don't want to talk to you. So I take him and say, listen, let's come and sit down and have a cup of tea. A cup of tea, you can't argue with me. Okay, well, have a cup of tea. I'll buy the tea. Let's sit down, just have something to eat, something to drink. What am I doing? I'm finding whatever common ground I can with this Jew. I can't talk to him, I can't discuss anything with him, I can't do mitzvah, I can't do anything. One thing I can do, I can have a cup of tea with him. So that's what I should do. I'm saying, when you meet another Jew, you have to find whatever you can in common with this Jew. If the only thing is to have a cup of tea, that's what you have to do. Because two neshamas have to find something in common with each other. And that's why to me that was a very, very important statement. And it's exactly the idea here. When you meet another Jew, we don't antagonize other Jews. Chas v'chalila, that's against what Lubavitch is about. Lubavitch is about uniting with other Jews. And if it's a way, if it is, and the Rebbe said also, it's well known, the Rebbe said that if somebody asked him about being Mekarev him, and he's saying words of the Rebbe, quoting the Rebbe, he says, do I have to say the Rebbe's quote that's from the Rebbe? The Rebbe said, if the person will be Mekarev more by the fact that you don't mention my name, then don't mention my name. The idea is that it's not a matter of names and gaiva and all of this stuff. We don't do that sort of stuff. A job of a Lubavitcher is to bring another Jew close, to make another Jew aware of Yiddishkeit, another Jew aware of Hasidus, whatever it is. That's our job in life, to bring another Jew closer somehow to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and to himself. And we have to find whatever way we can to do it. So we have to find a positive way to do it. So then, we don't do things in a negative way, an antagonistic way. That's against what we're all about. Completely against it. So therefore, when we're going to do things, sometimes, I have a friend who, he goes to certain places and does mitzvah in certain ways, and he also wears a big gechi on his yarmulke. When he does, he takes his yarmulke and he turns it inside out, right? Like that. He's still wearing his yarmulke, but, he doesn't antagonize people, but he achieves his result. And I had the same thing with myself many years ago. I had to go to a community in Hobart, Australia. There was a community there. I was actually born there in the city, and I left there when I was 10 years old. And I knew the people there at that time. I went back 20 years later. Now, between that time, there had been a Lubavitcher Shliach who had gone there to the terrible show. There was the Shliach who went there,
And he antagonized the people there. He got there and he started trying to get them to do more and more Yiddishkeit. They said, we don't want to see another Lubavitcher in this place. Get out of here. The word Lubavitch is absolutely pasul. We don't want it here. No Lubavitcher could go into the place. A few people tried to go. As soon as they heard the word Lubavitcher, Chabad, we don't want to hear about you. So I went there. I actually, you might have heard of the painter Baruch Nachshon. Baruch Nachshon had an exhibition and he went down there with his exhibition. And I met him beforehand and I said to him, listen, I introduced myself, we got to know each other. I said, now I'm going to be there as well at the exhibition. You met me here. When you see me there, you've never seen me, you don't know me, you don't recognize me, and don't worry what I look like. I went there, I rolled my beard up, I had jeans and thongs and a t-shirt and, kippas ruga and the whole thing. I definitely did not look anything like a Lubavitcher. And I went there and I spoke to the people and they remembered me from 20 years earlier and I started getting on with them. And I started getting slowly into the community again. Slowly got involved more and more. And over a number of years, it took them about 3 years to realize I was a Lubavitcher. By that time I was running the services on Yom Tov and doing all sorts of things like that. Because if I'd gone in that way, it wouldn't have been accepted, nothing would have happened. I had to do things differently. Sometimes you do that. That's how it is. That's what Lubavitcher is all about. Always done that sort of thing. So maybe that answers the question, maybe it doesn't. Yes, you had a question first.
Flip it around. You can say that people were antagonizing him. Once you fire through that word antagonizing, that's what
he wasn't, but they weren't Lubavitchers.
So, how come if you're telling him the fact that he should respect them, you can say you should tell them to respect him?
You have more chance of telling one person to respect a group of 30 or 40 people than you have of telling a group of 30, 40 people to respect one person. You're right. It should be that they should also have the respect for him, but that wasn't going to work. Definitely not in this case. And they would have, and if he would be smart enough, he would know that if he wanted to get them to respect him, then he has to do it in a different way. I mean, look, I work in the same environment, right? Everybody knows that I'm a Lubavitcher. I learn Hasidus with guys when I can, right? I learn Tanya with them. I learn whatever I can. We talk Hasidus. They know that Rav Landau's a Lubavitcher. Right? He has Fabrengens a few times a year, and when he does, all he's doing is explaining in Yanim of Hasidus and talking about these things. There's no question about it. The thing is that there, because it's done in a way which is not antagonistic towards them, they accept it. They accept it and they learn from it. When you come into my office, you'll see a big picture of the Rebbe sitting on the wall right behind me. Right? And not only that, it's a picture of the Rebbe that they can't handle. Because it's a Baruch Nachshon picture, and he's got some strange pictures of the Rebbe with the Rebbe's head sitting inside this one is the Rebbe sitting like a flower. His head with flower petals around it. Another one we've got the Rebbe's head sort of sitting in on the grass. Another one with the Rebbe there and birds flying around him. It's sort of all weird sort of stuff. But I've got one of these in my office, and I get comments about it from these guys. They can't. It's difficult for them. They also see on my computer screen, it's got a big picture of the Rebbe on it. Well, they're not mucking around. I mean, there's no question. Everyone knows I'm a Lubavitcher, right? And they don't have a problem with it. They don't have a problem with Lubavitcher. They have a problem with being antagonistic towards them. They respect what I do, and I respect them too. Because you know why? Because I respect them. I respect them, and therefore they respect me. As soon as you don't respect them, you sort of go in their face, you're not respecting them either.
How's the Yom in your face?
Not for you, but it is for them. Because they aren't, look, you understand. You don't understand the mentality. I'll tell you something. You don't understand the mentality of these people, right? They're brought up differently. A lot of these people are into politics in a big way. They know exactly what's going on in Chabad, right? They're here, there's Mashiachis, there's anti-Mashiachis, there's this, there's politics here, there's politics there. Right? They hear all about it. They love politics. They live politics. In their own Tehillas, there's heaps of politics.
And you hear them talking, it's always politics. You know, this is their big thing. It gives them chayas. So they know what's going on, and therefore this and that, and you know, and essentially they also might take sides in their own minds. It's wrong. I agree with you, it's wrong, but that's the reality. And therefore, if you want to approach them in a positive way, if you want to win them over, right, then you have to do it in a way which says,
By firing someone, that's not really
they're firing him because he was doing the wrong thing. He was warned. It wasn't just fired. He was warned. He was warned about it. He was told, look, you're not behaving in the right way in this situation. Look, you've got to, you know, if you go work in a bank, right? You can't walk into the bank, right, in jeans and t-shirt, right? There's norms of behavior in everything. You have to go in a certain way. Otherwise, they're going to fire you, right? If you're not going to keep the rules, so to speak, even the rules which are ridiculous. I mean, what's the difference if I go to work in jeans and t-shirt? If I work in a bank, what's the difference? I don't do my work differently. What happens? It doesn't make sense. It's illogical. There's not the union of that. The idea is that there are norms in certain things which are accepted and things which are not accepted. And who decide what's accepted and what's not, I don't know. But there are certain things which are accepted in certain environments, and you have to live within those environments. You can't sort of do things differently to that. Everyone does that. That's life. Wherever you're going to go, you have to do it. You can't just do what you want. You have to fit in with what's acceptable. Yes?
One is, in the future, when you hire a HaSofer that during the interview tells you, I plan to wear the kippah. He's wearing one during the interview, he states clearly, I plan to wear the kippah.
I don't hire shoftim. If he, I don't know. It's possible. I mean, but he'd be smart enough if he's going to go work for there that he'd know when he goes to the interview. So you won't wear a yechi yarmulke. What's going to be? I don't think that a yechi yarmulke. Look, I'm going to look around here. There's not a lot of people wearing yechi yarmulkes, right? It's not the. I don't know why it becomes kind of like the the definition of what has to be. I don't know. It's there are different ways of looking at it. You know, it's. It doesn't necessarily have to be the issue. I think the most important thing is we have to get a little bit under the yechi yarmulke and see who the person is. I think that's much more important, and that's very much what I know in my upbringing in Chabad. What's the most important thing? Who you're dealing with? What is the person? Not what the chitzonius is. Sure, you wear a yechi yarmulke in order to try and make people aware and whatever, but that's not the issue. The most important issue is the pneumius, not the chitzonius.
So in that case, if the HaSofer is your smart person, a good HaSofer, then he's wearing the kippah, that shouldn't matter. It should matter to the other people if they can't handle it. If they're all about the politics, not about what he believes.
But what about what the Rebbe is saying? You have to do something for ofen hamiskabel. What does ofen hamiskabel mean? What does it mean? Ofen hamiskabel is exactly this point. I have to do something in a way that the other person accepts it, not necessarily in the way that I want to put it over. And we learn in Chassidus, look at the many Maimorim which talk about education, right? They talk about education, how a teacher teaches a student. A teacher has a great amount of knowledge, but he can't give that great amount of knowledge to the student. He has to contract that knowledge so that the student can deal with it. It's the same thing here. There's no difference. The whole idea is that we have to contract what we're doing so that the other person can handle it. And that's what I see that as a very important part of Chabad. That's how I think that Lubavitchers have to behave. I mean, if we didn't have, we have to accept other people because we've learned Chassidus, we know what it means. We want them to become closer to Yiddishkeit. There is a goal in what we're doing, and that goal is to bring another person closer and closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, closer to Yiddishkeit.
He's also trying to make other people become leaders, so to speak. He wasn't trying to encourage them.
He could have makarev them by not doing that, in my opinion. And I don't know what he was trying to do. I don't know, but the fact that after you're warned that you're antagonizing people, I mean, if I'm warned that I'm antagonizing people, I'm going to change my ways. I don't want to antagonize anyone. I don't think that's right. I really don't believe so. I think it's right, more right, is to have Avos Yisrael and to create Achdus rather than antagonism, which creates pirud amongst people. That's how I.
That be reflected on your hashgacha. If you have a product that you are saying, suddenly you give the hashgacha and suddenly you say, wait a second, this is not okay, and everybody else says, what's wrong with this? It's a great company. You've always been the hashgacha before. This company gives hashgacha. This company gives hashgacha. They give hashgacha. They give hashgacha. You're antagonizing people.
I don't think it's the same thing. I don't.
Can we go on to the next question?
We have another question over here. 1 second.
Isn't that the same logic that basically the U.S. government used the U.S. government against the Jim Crow laws in the United States? Black people weren't allowed to sit on different parts of the bus, wouldn't use certain water fountains. I mean, the white people in the South claim that they were antagonizing, because that's not their way of life. They were raised from birth to know that black people had one water fountain, white people had one water fountain, black people had one toilet, white people had one toilet. Black people said one part of the restaurant, white people said one part of the restaurant. When a black person would say, like, this is Gary Parker, the Native American little rock was sitting in the bus, and in the front of the bus, that antagonized people, which went to jail. But the ultimate outcome of that was that what ended up happening is the United States struck down all those laws and forced all white people to integrate with white people. So how's that different from
I don't think it's really the same thing. Here you're talking not about something which here you're talking about something which affect the whole societies. I mean, with the black and white people, that's how they did it for many years. The blacks were slaves, they were downtrodden. It's not the same thing. Here we're talking about people who, as a matter of free choice, have decided to behave in a particular way. And it's not talking about everybody. It's talking about one person. I don't think it's necessarily. I don't really see the correlation.
Would Rabbi have the same attitude to someone wearing a kippah sruga?
Yeah, we don't have anyone working for us with a kippah sruga. No, they don't work for us. Also, we don't have people who are non-Hasidim working for us either. That's correct. No literatures. Is that antagonizing? Not at all. There's reasons for that because of the outlook. The outlook is different. The outlook of a chassid, right, is going to be different to the outlook of someone who's not a chassid on kashrus. And I can tell you, I see it across the board. It's not a matter of trusting. We don't trust anybody. Nobody. There's not one hechsher that Rav Landau trusts. Why? Because we check everything ourselves. We don't need to trust other hechsher.
What do you do for Landau?
That's not what I'm saying. You would hire him?
Why?
You wouldn't hire Rabbi Yasher?
Rabbi Yasher has never applied for a job. I can't tell you. The fact is, I'm not talking about that. I'm saying that in general, we don't have the people who work for Rav Landau Hasidim. And that is, look, it's an outlook. You're brought up with a particular outlook. A chassid is brought up, even though most of the Hasidim, for instance, don't learn Hasidus as such, but they're brought up in a way of respecting an authority. They have a Rebbe. They respect the authority. They go to the tish. They have a way of doing things in their daily life. And that translates very well when you're working for a hashgacha, working for a hechsher, to listen to your Rav HaMachshir and to do what you're told in that particular way. You understand it, but you also are more apt to not go against the tide, whereas other groups of people will. The way that their upbringing is different. I mean, it's a well-known thing you learn in, say that a literature guy is sitting in a literature yeshiva, and so he said, look, I upschlag Rashi, I don't agree with what Rashi said, Rashi, I disagree with him. We learn different, we don't do such a thing. By the Rebbe Sichas, that, everything that the Rebbe, I've heard a guy say something like that. Rashi was someone else. But I thought, wait a minute, what are you saying? We learn that every single word and every intonation of Rashi is important. We see by the Rebbe Sichas. And yet, it's a different outlook. It's a different way of learning. It's a different thing altogether. Therefore, it's not so matim for the kashrus. I want somebody. I'm not saying anything wrong. But people who I know very well, are good literature people and whatever. But as far as if I want somebody to follow what the instructions I'm giving and to do the things that I need, I want someone with a particular outlook that's going to work. I think we should really get on to the next question. Okay. Why do certain hashgacha organizations say that something is kosher when others say it's treif? Similar kind of concept. It depends on the level of the people who are giving the hashgacha. I'll give you an example. Firstly, there's different things in hashgacha. You take the OU, right? Everyone in America, a lot of people eat the OU. The OU has a stated policy that they will give hashgacha to whatever product they can, use whatever leniencies they can, which are acceptable in halacha, in order to have as many products on supermarket shelves in the US as possible, so that somebody out in the back of Michigan can go into a supermarket and buy a kosher product. That's the stated policy, and I have no problem with it whatsoever. And I've seen it. I've been, about a year ago, I was out in the back of Ohio somewhere, Idaho. I was in Idaho. And there really weren't too many kosher supermarkets in the place, especially out in the country areas. And I was with another guy from Israel, and he was going around, he was looking for something to eat in the supermarket. And he went and he was looking for products for the OU. He found health bars, he found this, he found that, all of the things. He was able to eat quite well from what he found with OU Hechsherim out in the back of Idaho. So the policy works. So what's wrong with it? They will use every leniency they can in order to achieve that. And like I said earlier, I'll give you an example. There was a number of years ago, probably about 5 or 6 years ago now, Eretz Yisrael used to bring, I think, canned mushrooms, right? Mushrooms in the can. Most of the canned mushrooms used to come from China. They used to take it, used to open up the cans and use the mushrooms, and that was it. Somebody opened up one of these cans of mushrooms and was looking at it very carefully, and they noticed that there were little worms inside the can. So they got a few other cans, opened it up, and they found the same thing. They publicized it, and it was discovered that in fact most of the cans of mushrooms had these worms in them. The worms were very small, they were yellow, they were very similar in color to the mushrooms themselves, and they couldn't be seen until you looked for them. But nobody looked for them because there was no need to. It wasn't one of those things that needed to be checked. But once it was found, it was stopped. All Hechsherim stopped using it. At that point, I did some research on the subject to discover where these worms come from, and if it was a problem in all mushrooms from everywhere or just from China. What I discovered was that there's different ways of growing mushrooms. There's what is called the Dutch model, and there was a Chinese model. The Dutch model is essentially they grow mushrooms in hot houses, in special enclosed hot houses, and it's very, very much like a laboratory. Very, very clean, completely enclosed. There's no way that anything can get in from outside, and there's no worms or bugs or anything in it. Whereas the way they're grown in China was that private people have a plot of land and they grow mushrooms on their plot of land, and they cut them, they take them to the factory. And because China, you're dealing with many hundreds of thousands of millions of people over there, a lot of them have these little plots, and it comes depending on how they grow the mushrooms. They take to the factory, a lot of them have got worms on them because mushrooms attract worms. Now they're not grown actually on the ground, but they're grown up a little bit. They're grown on stalls, like platforms above the ground. But flies came in, bugs of other sorts came in, those that attracted to mushrooms laid their eggs and they had worms. On the basis of that, Israel decided, the Rabbanut here decided they're not going to use mushrooms from China anymore. So we all started bringing from different countries. Now, I got a call at that time from a rabbi in the OU who asked me, why is it that we're not allowing these mushrooms? So I explained to him the whole situation, how it's grown, what the problem is. He said, okay, thanks very much. 2 weeks later, he called me back. He said, listen, I've got on the line, I've got some of our poskim, the top poskim of the OU, those who decide what the OU policies are according to halacha, and I want you to discuss with them this issue. I said, fine, with the greatest of pleasure. So I discussed it with them. And then one of them says to me, look, why can't we use the same concept as cheese? The Shulchan Aruch tells you that if you have cheese which is wormy, it has worms in it, you can eat those worms. Why? Because we're talking about certain cheeses where the worms came from what is known as spontaneous propagation. They grew in the cheese by themselves, and they never came out and they never touched the ground. If they didn't touch the ground, they're not considered a worm in halacha. So he said, maybe I can do the same thing here with the mushrooms. Since the mushrooms are growing up on platforms, right? So therefore, I can say that the worms never touch the ground. Therefore, they're not considered worms. Therefore, I can eat these mushrooms with worms in them. Now, I took about 20 minutes to half an hour to talk him out of this. That, to explain in many different ways that this is really not the way to go. But because they want to try and do it in whatever way so they can allow it, they did. Another example is the OU has a blanket rule. There is a concept called Bishul Akum, Bishul Yisrael. Things which require to be, are not eaten raw, which require cooking before you eat them, and can be eaten as part of a meal, require a Jew to cook them. Now, what does this mean? For instance, meat. All right, you don't eat meat raw. It requires cooking to eat it, and it's eaten as part of a meal. And oil shulchan malachim, it's something that's served at a king's table. So it's not eaten raw. It goes on a king's table and is eaten as part of a meal. Those things require bishul yisrael. A Jew has to cook it. Now, the question is this. What about things like canned vegetables? Let's say corn. Canned corn. Corn, you don't eat it raw, you cook it before you eat it. It's eaten as part of a meal, and it's served at a king's table. I mean, kings eat corn. Today the definition of served at a king's table is that you would eat it at a wedding. So therefore corn requires Bishul Yisrael, even if it's canned. The OU has a policy: anything which is canned is not served at a king's table. I don't understand that policy personally, because I see, you go to any caterer, you'll see he's opening up lots of cans of corn and putting it in the food. So I mean, I don't understand how that works. But that is one way of, they decided on this policy. That's one thing that you have as far as hashkochas are concerned. So somebody say it is okay, someone say it's not. That same corn that the OU will say is alright, we will say it's not okay, because it's oil shulchan malachim, requires bishul yisrael. OU doesn't do bishul yisrael on it. They, as a matter of policy, do not do bishul yisrael on any canned good. Like in America, I think maybe fish they do, but vegetables and things do not require bishul yisrael at all. The end result of it is, from a practical perspective, if it requires bishul yisrael, let's say you go to a factory that makes canned corn, halacha says where a product requires bishul yisrael and the guy did the cooking, it's called bishul akum, you have to kasher the whole factory. It's like treif complete, you have to kasher, a proper kashering. Now, if it doesn't require bishul yisrael, you don't have to kasher the factory. Therefore, I can say I don't have to send a mashgiach to a canned vegetable factory. Canned vegetables, I can just take the stuff. I don't have to kasher, I don't have to send a mashgiach, nothing. It's perfectly okay. Whereas another organization will have to go there, stop production, kasher the factory. It's not the same thing at all. So therefore, the requirements are going to be different. Yes. The which? Potato chips? Depends which sort.
you're talking about, see, I told you, everything depends, right? So you asked me a question, like I told you at the beginning, everything is relative. It depends. So what is the depends in this case? Are you talking about just normal potato chips, or are you talking about Pringles? So see, so I have to ask more questions. So Pringles are different because Pringles are made from potato flour. They don't require Bishul Yisrael. But normal potato chips, a potato itself, I didn't say Pringles are kosher. I asked about Bishul Yisrael. Now, the normal potato chip is a potato. A potato cannot be eaten raw. It's oil al shulchan malachim. Right? Eat it at weddings. And it's eaten as part of a meal. Therefore, potato requires Bishul Yisrael. Therefore, potato chips require Bishul Yisrael. Give you another example. Ever seen those, they have these rice noodles? Right? Seen these see-through rice noodles? You'll see those in the supermarkets here with all sorts of hechsherim. I don't understand it. How do they make rice noodles? Who knows how they make rice noodles? Anyone here know how to make rice noodles? Huh?
Rice.
Very good. That's excellent. Yeah, brilliant stuff. What are rice noodles? They're very thin. They look like noodles. Vermicelli they call. But they're very thin and they're see-through. They're transparent. White, transparent noodles. The way they make it is that they take rice and they cook it, then they grind it, and then they extrude it into these noodles and then they dry it. Rice is a food which cannot be eaten raw. It's oil al shulchan malachim, served at weddings. It's eaten as part of a meal. Therefore it requires Bishul Yisrael. So as soon as somebody is cooking this, some factory in Thailand is cooking this rice, it requires Bishul Yisrael. So how you can get to the next stage of grinding it and turning it into noodles, I don't know, without having done Bishul Yisrael. And none of the factories do Bishul Yisrael. To me, it's a very big question. It appears to me that people just don't take it into consideration. There's also a lot of other things. I know of a particular example. There's a person who I know who was working in Manhattan for a particular hashgacha. And he called me up one day and he said to me, didn't I learn from you at a shiur that we had in Oret Mimim last year that if you leave onions out overnight, that you're not supposed to eat it the next day? And I said, absolutely. I said, what's the problem? He says, well, the place I'm working at over here, they've got onions from day to day, and they don't do anything with it. Right? And the rabbi had no idea about it. Not heard of the concept of what is called linas laila. So he permitted it, but it was out of a lack of knowledge.
What do you mean, raw onions?
Raw onions. Onions, there's three things. There are a number of foods which the Torah tells you that you can't leave overnight. In other words, one is raw onions. Now the onion is onion which is raw and peeled and doesn't have the root. The root is there. So the onion has a root, like the hairs coming up the bottom. If that's cut off and there's no skin on the onion, you have to use that the same day unless you turn it into a food, a tavshel, by changing its taste. You can put salt on it, you can cook it, you can do various things. Then you can use it regular. Putting it in the fridge does not help. It has to change its flavor. Putting it in the fridge does not change the flavor. That's onions is one, garlic is another. Again, if it's peeled and if the root is taken off. And the third one is eggs. Eggs which are without the shell, the same thing applies. And therefore this is called the halacha of linas laila. It's brought in the Gemara. And you're not allowed to... You what? No, not without the shell. In the shell, right? If you break the egg onto a plate, you can't leave it. If you peel an egg, a boiled egg, you can't leave it overnight unless you add something else to change its flavor. So that's it. It's a halacha which obviously some people don't know about. And it's a very clear halacha. I mean, what we did in that case was I sent you remember the information on it. Don't give it to the guy. Let him read it. Let him see. Remember? I don't know what he did. I don't know what he did after. But the fact is that these things happen, and a lot of it is a lack of knowledge. So people give hechsherim on things due to lack of knowledge. Others give hechsherim because they know they do have knowledge, but they have a particular level of kashrus they want to supply they will put their name on, and therefore they want to do it in a way that aims to a particular type of group of people. So therefore you have different levels of hechsherim. You also have hechsherim which simply don't have the knowledge or the tools to check things. See, in hechsherim themselves, some of them have got a person who knows how to check ingredients, who knows chemistry, who knows the chemicals, who knows the production processes, where there could be problems, and that person checks the various productions. Now when you do that, obviously you're going to have a fairly high level of hechsher, because you know what's going on and you can look at every different thing and see whether or not it's okay. A lot of hechsherim don't have people who can do that sort of work. Therefore they rely on some other hechsher who does that. So immediately, as soon as I'm relying on another hechsher, I'm relying on what they're doing, and I have no say in what they're doing. So therefore, that can be a problem as well. I mean, a lot of the smaller hechsherim, okay, look, we'll accept all products from Badatz and Ravlanda, or this and that and the other. Any product from them we'll accept in our hechsher. What control do you have of what's going on? You really have very little, because it depends on what the hechsher is and how they decided, how they paskin that this food is okay. So again, you're going to have a lower level of hechsher than you will if somebody can check everything and do everything. Yes.
What's wrong with following hechsher and giving hechsher, as in not that lack of knowledge or lack of
okay, you want because there's a halachic heter that you can have something.
What's wrong with following hechsher? I mean, given halacha for reasons.
Correct. Now that's the question. Why is the heter given in halacha? Hello? Ken, shalom aleichem. כן, אני שלחתי את זה לרב. זה באנגלית, הרב זוכר זה היה באנגלית. אוקיי, אני אשלח את זה עוד מעט. כן, בסדר, that was my boss. What? Okay, I'll tell you, the difference is this. Shulchan Aruch, okay, I'll explain to you. When, I'll give you an example. When you kasher things, right? You often know kasher for Pesach, kasher, something which become treif, right? You do what is known as Hagala. Hagala means that you take a utensil, you make sure it's clean, you leave it 24 hours after it's clean, then you put it in boiling water, you take it out of the boiling water, and you put in cold water, and it's now kasher. Okay, that's called Hagala, essentially. When you're dealing with factories, let's say I want to kasher a factory, I have to do Hagala on the factory as well. I have to go in and I have to see which parts of the factory are require Hagala, which are used at a particular temperature, which is known as Yad Soledes Boy, which is essentially over 40 degrees Celsius or 140 degrees Fahrenheit. And those things have to do the same process. In other words, you have to clean it, have to leave it unused for 24 hours, and then go through a process of boiling water. There is a tshuva of the Igros Moshe Feinstein, Alav Shalom. He wrote a lot of tshuvas, right? He wrote a book of tshuvas. People asked him questions and he answered them. He says that in a situation of Shasad Chak, in other words, a case of emergency, and Hefsed Meruba, a situation where there's going to be a large loss of money, then instead of waiting 24 hours, you can just clean the utensil, you can do Hagala on it straight away, put it in boiling water, rinse it off, cool it, put it in boiling water again, and then you can use it immediately. That's a heter.
Now what does that mean? Is that if I want to now kosher factory, look, there's a heter. Someone says you can do it. Okay? Obviously, if you can do it in this situation, it makes it kosher, right? If you've done it that way, it's kosher. But he says, so why does he say only in a case of emergency and a great loss? He's putting provisos on this particular thing. Not just anyone can do it whenever they want. He's putting provisos. In other words, it's a case of b'diavad, a case that it's not the normal situation. When I really need to, I can fall back on that situation. But l'chatchila, it's definitely not l'chatchila. It's not the way I want to do it in the first place. The first instance.
That's going to lose a lot of money.
You what?
There's a whole factory that stops that for hours to lose a lot of money, and then I'm willing to receive a hefter if that's what it's going to take to cash it like that. Then is that not the case of loss of money in an emergency?
No, absolutely not.
Or not?
That's not a loss of money. It's a lack of making more profit. There's a big difference. A loss of money is that I put money here, and now I'm going to lose money. On the other hand, if I could, if this factory is working fine without this, right? But on the other hand, it's not going to make as much profit as it would like, because if it gets a kosher market, it's going to make much more profit. It's not a loss of money. I can tell you that this particular cooler, the reason I'm mentioning it, there are a lot of hechsherim. In fact, most hechsherim today use that cooler of Moshe Feinstein lechatchila. They will go to a factory and they say, okay, we want to kosher the factory. The guy says, no, I don't know if I want to do that. I said, no problem. We have an answer for you. We will do it this way. We'll kosher it. You don't have to wait 24 hours. We'll just go through a cleaning process and quick koshering process and start kosher production. Now, in that situation, you can see it's not the highest level of kashrus. That's essentially the difference between what we're talking about here. Some people do things the chatchila only. Some people round off corners and do things b'diavad. And although you can find a basis to halacha for it, it's not lechatchila. And a person, therefore, what should I have to do? My opinion is, I have no problem with them doing that. Tell the people that this is the level that you're doing. Tell the people who are buying your hechsher like the OU does, right? And they publicize it. The fact is people don't want to listen to it because a lot of people, even holding a high level of kashrus, will eat OU because that's what you get in America. But the reality is they publicize very clearly that that's their way of doing this, to use a lot of heterim. But I, for instance, I don't want to eat kosher food which has got a lot of heterim. I want to eat kosher food the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants me to eat it. The chatchila. I want to make sure I don't have any, rounded off corners. I want it straight as it is. I want it pure. I want it right. What does HaKadosh Baruch Hu want from me? It says in the Torah, you do this, this, and this. This is how you do it lechatchila. I want to do it lechatchila. Like when I want to, what's the difference? You buy clothes, right? You buy clothes, you want to buy good quality clothes, whatever. You don't always, sometimes you don't need such good quality clothes. Sometimes you can buy lesser quality clothes. You can buy something which is a bit junky, whatever. But if you're going to go to shul, you're going to go somewhere nice, you want something nice to wear because this is with respect. I'm going in a respectful manner. Right? You don't go to shul in your pajamas. Right? Why? They're clothes. What's wrong with that? It's still clothes. I can sit there and I can justify without any problem that there's no reason why I shouldn't go to shul in my pajamas. Because somebody else looks at it and they don't like what I'm wearing, that's their problem. I'm clothed properly, it smears, whatever, it's a difference. But it's not. It's one level, that's another level. Kasha, the food is the same thing, kasha is the same thing. We want to eat in a manner of lechatchila. And as you keep more and more things, I want to do it on the better way. I want to do it in the best way possible, the way that I feel HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants me to do it. I want to do the things the way He wants, not the way I want. And therefore, I'm not going to be satisfied with leniencies. Because I can tell you, I can find a leniency for almost anything you want. Almost anything. Okay, the next question. There's a lot of these questions here today. Why don't Chabadniks eat Bel's Shchita? Why should they? The Lubavitchers, the Alter Rebbe,
writes very strongly that Lubavitcher should eat Shchitas Chabad. So that's what we should eat. Why should we look at something else? I don't see the point. I don't understand the question. It mystifies me a little bit. Yeah. What?
What's the difference between shikha and shikha?
That's another question. Now, the next question is, why does Rav Landa not give hashgacha on orange juice? Now the next question is the difference between the different shkittas. There are two questions. We'll get to it. Yirtzeh Hashem, I don't skip over things, we'll get to that. The next question is, why does Rav Landa not give hashgacha on orange juice? The answer is very simple. Eretz Yisrael has a very big problem with Orla. There are a lot of the Rav Landa says we have two people who are agronomists who go around and they check all the fields of all the fruit that we're going to eat. They actually map the fields out. They know when the trees were planted, and they know which trees they can use and which ones they can't. They go at the beginning of the season when fruits have started to grow, and our rules are anyone who wants to sell fruit to Rav Landa's hechsher, our growers go through the field at the early part of the season when the fruit are growing, and if the tree is an orla tree, our mashgichim remove the fruit from that tree so that they won't grow. Then when it comes time to pick the fruit, the only fruit that are there are fruit which are permitted to be eaten. That's what we do. And we go from field to field for every type of fruit tree. Other hechsherim, some other hechsherim, especially the Rabbanot, they also have mashgichim who go, but they're not as particular. They won't map out the fields. They won't see exactly what. They'll look at a field on a general perspective. Like they'll say, look at the field, they'll see that the trees are a particular height, a particular size, and they'll say, okay, that's okay. And they'll take from the whole field. But things do happen. Trees die, they plant new trees, there's all sorts of things that happen in fields. I mean, I remember once one of my agronomists was telling me that he was at an olive field, and one year he comes there and he sees, I mean, these are trees which are 30 or 40 years old, and he sees there's something different. And he says to the owner, tell me something, have you moved these trees? The owner said, yeah, I had to move the trees, I had to pull them out and replant them because they built a road nearby and had to move the trees from that area of the road and put them in the field. According to halacha, as soon as you pull out a tree and replant it, orla starts again. So in this situation, although the trees were 20 or 30 years old, right, the orla started again from scratch. It would be 3 years orla before they could use the fruit. So you have to essentially check every tree. Now, so there's differences in hashgachas of orla in Eretz Yisrael. Some people also say that you can have a certain percentage of orla. I don't want to get into it. You can, you can't. A certain percentage of orla is okay, it's bottle or whatever. We went to a number of plants that make orange juice, right, to see what we could do there. How do they make orange juice? They essentially get fruit when they pick from a field. They go to a sorting house. Right? The fruit all goes into this one place, and they get sorted into first quality, second, third, and fourth quality fruit. The first quality fruit usually is sent overseas. We don't see that. The second or third quality fruit is what's sold on the Israeli market. That's what we get over here. And the fourth quality fruit is used for juicing. When they're doing the sorting in the house, right? All of the fourth quality fruit goes to one side. It all goes to these great big tubs, and it's going to go to the juice factory. The first quality fruit goes overseas. The second and third quality fruit, depending on the hechsher, there might be a Vlandos hechsher, there might be a Rabbanut hechsher, there might be this hechsher, another hechsher that's come in, and the fruits come from their fields. That will be sorted into, the second and third quality will go and put aside for that hechsher, and all the fourth quality goes to the side. And that's what goes to the juicing factory. It's all a mixture. We tried to separate it in the sorting house. There is no way that they can do it. They're not set up for separating fourth quality fruit into better hechsherim and worse hechsherim, or whatever it's going to be. They can't do it. So all of that fruit is together, put in, and goes to the juice factory. We even ask the juice factories, so why don't you just buy a whole field, as it is, and juice that whole field? It'll cost you a bit more, we'll do it. We're prepared to do it. It'll cost them too much. They'll put the juice outside of a reasonable price bracket. And we spoke to quite a number of factories. They simply, physically can't do it. So therefore, Rav Landa doesn't give hechsher on fruit juice, because we can't get it to the level that we want to make sure there's no olive fruit in the fruit juice. There's no juice. Oh, there's apple juice. It's not so. We have one company in the north of Israel that makes apple juice and pomegranate juice and carrot juice and a mixture of whatever. They do that. It's a natural juice. But then, we make sure that everything is done under hashgacha. Yes.
Just for everybody, Rav Landa does give hechsher on melon juice. It's called melon soda. Yeah. It's sort of like a whitish color, because that's not a problem for them. Melons are problem.
But that's not a juice as such, is it?
Soda.
It's a soda. It's not a juice.
Right.
That's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. It's not made with juice.
Strawberries.
Huh?
Strawberries.
Yeah, we don't make strawberry juice.
Banana.
Okay. Now to get to your question, what is the difference between Chabad Shchita, Glat, and Beis Yosef? Chabad Shchita is, as defined by the Alter Rebbe. Basically, the Alter Rebbe has a number of different things which requirements he has for Shchita, both from the point of view of the Chalaf and the point of view of the Shoichet. As far as the Chalaf is concerned, basically what the Alter Rebbe requires, the Chalaf is the knife which you use to shecht. Sorry. So most of the requirements of the Alter Rebbe have been accepted universally, and his requirements are what everybody uses today. As far as the Shoichet is concerned, the Alter Rebbe requires that the Shoichet will go to the mikveh before, every day, before Shchita, and he will learn Chassidus before Shchita. So when he goes to shecht, he's going to be a different sort of person. He's not shechting just as a job, but he's shechting as a person who's learned Chassidus and gone to mikveh. So spiritually he'll be in a more fit state to shecht. That is what is required by the Alter Rebbe. And that is essentially what defines Shchitas Chabad Shchita. Glat is a completely different thing. Glat, in Hebrew, is called halak. The word glat in Yiddish means smooth. What it means is that when they shecht the animal, the shochet makes a slit in the animal's stomach, and he puts his in the stomach. It's not the stomach; it's in the hide, just around here near the top. And he puts his hand in, and he feels the lungs, the lung cavity, the lungs in the lung cavity. Now he wants to see that the lung is not attached to the rib cage at all. When an animal is sick, then there are growths between the lung and the rib cage, which basically anchor the lung to the rib cage. And that is a sick animal. Sometimes it's so sick that the animal is considered a treifa. Sometimes it's this growth can be removed. This growth is called a sircha in technical terms. Now, when the shochet puts his hand in, then if he feels that there is no connections between the lung and the rib cage, it is called halak. It's called smooth. If it's not called halak. So then what they do is they take out the lung, they usually blow it up, and they try and remove the sircha if it can be removed. If it is, then the animal is kosher, but not halak, not glat kosher. So glat is a higher level. The animal, right from the word go, is completely healthy, and that's what glat kosher is. And what about Bet Yosef? Bet Yosef is, again, the Bet Yosef is the way that the Sfaradim paskin according to the Bet Yosef.
So again, he had certain requirements for the shchita, and they go according to that. They are different to the Ramah. The Ramah is how the Ashkenazim paskin, the Beis Yosef according to the Sfaradim, how they paskin. There are some different requirements. Sometimes the Beis Yosef is more stringent than the Ramah. Sometimes the Ramah is more stringent than the Beis Yosef. It all depends. They're just different requirements. But that's the difference between the shchitas.
South Africa, there's a Beis Yosef which sees the Bab's.
Okay. I don't know. I really don't know. Probably they shecht according to the Beis Yosef, but the shachtim go to the mikvah and Hasidus first. I wouldn't say it's a problem. I don't know what. Before I could answer that, I'd have to know what are the differences. What do they do here and what do they do there? I don't know. I couldn't say. Yes. No. Absolutely not. You have glatt Beis Yosef. You can have glatt normal shchita. You can have glatt shchitas Chabad.
The only difference in that what you're trying to say is between Chabad is that Chabad is going to make them non-Muslim.
That's right.
Others,
They don't necessarily do that. For instance, Rav Landau has got a normal shchita, and he also makes chicken shchitas Chabad, where the shchitas Chabad is done by only the Lubavitcher Shachtim. So you have a shchitas Chabad. That's what I use at home. I use Rav Landau shchitas Chabad because I know that Rav Landau shchita is the best there is, and the shchitas Chabad. So I get that as well because that's what the Alter Rebbe says. We should eat shchitas Chabad. Okay, let's go further. What percentage of cows are glatt kosher? Like all questions, like I mentioned, it all depends. Depends on the season. If it's winter, the percentage is reduced dramatically. In summer, because in winter, a lot more cows get colds. They get a cold. A cold will cause a growth between the lung and the rib cage. So therefore, one be glatt. The percentage we've had when we sent out shachtim to shchitas, sometimes we've had around 20% glatt kosher. Sometimes we've had 40%. Maximum we had 60%. That's a really good time. Depending on the season when it is, there's no clear-cut percentage. I can't really tell you. It's not just cows, it's also chickens. Chickens can also be treifas. We've had times where we also check the lungs of all the chickens. We've had times where we've had only 20% of the chicken shechted were kosher. Kosher. And in that situation, we've advertised in the papers that there won't be too many fresh chickens this week. You'll have to buy frozen. It happens. Depends on a lot of factors. It's not something you could, if we knew, it would be fantastic. Because imagine if you knew exactly, what percentage you could rely on, But there's a lot of factors that come into it. It might have been glatt, it might be smooth, there might be other problems. We just now, the last couple of years we had a problem that in Argentina we found that there were scars on the stomach of the animal. We discovered that the cows had what is called bloat. There is cows when they eat grass, especially young spring grass, if it's clover grass, some cows are susceptible to producing a lot of gas inside their stomachs. But it's not just gas, it turns into foam. Cows in general produce a lot of gas, but they let it out, and that's not a problem. But when it turns into foam inside the stomach, foam is a lot of bubbles, and the bubbles don't escape easily. In fact, the bubbles contain the gas inside the stomach. So as the stomach produces more and more gas, the animal blows up more and more and more. It bloats out to such an extent, if it's not dealt with, the animal will literally blow up. It'll burst. There'll be cow everywhere. Now, the poor cow, it's not that funny, but you could see cows just blowing up. They do. They just boom. Now, in this situation, what they do is to save the cow's life. they have a fairly thick needle which has got a hole in it, and the farmer will go and just shove the needle inside the cow's stomach and allow the foam to escape, and it essentially saves the cow's life. Now what that does is, because it's going into the stomach, it produces a hole in the stomach. A hole in the stomach is called a treifa, la halacha. It turns the animal into a treifa, because an animal with a hole in the stomach won't be able to live. So it's treifa. Now that animal, although it can live, but a hole in the stomach is one of the things that can cause an animal to die. In that situation, the animal is treifa, and we can't use it. And we actually have to put a mashgiach on to check each stomach to see if there's scarring on the stomach, to detect if they had a puncture put into their stomach, and that makes the animal treif.
How come animals not grown up?
You what?
How do we have cows not?
No, it only happens. Only certain cows are susceptible to it. Not all cows, and only certain times of the year. It's usually when there's spring grass, and usually when it's clover grass. But this is what happens. So again, you can have a lot of different factors which can cause problems. Just now we've had a shchita, we had other problems. We had problems with the pancreas of the animal, where we saw that on the pancreas has a skin, and we saw there were holes on quite a large percentage of the holes on the pancreas skin, a large percentage of the animals. Again, it's an issue which had to be dealt with. So even though the lungs might be perfectly okay, they could have some other issue with it, and therefore also cause trephus. So it's hard to give you a percentage of glut animals, because the lungs might be smooth, but there could be some other issue, and therefore the percentage would, rise and fall accordingly. Next, is it true that Badatz Yerushalayim gives hashgacha on chalav vacuum products? I'm not aware of this. I don't know. I can't tell you what goes on in Badatz Yerushalayim. I don't think so, but I can't really tell. I would imagine probably not. The aim of the hashgacha is that it's a good hashgacha, and the people that they're giving their target audience are very frum people, so who don't eat chalav vacuum. So it's highly unlikely that they knowingly would give hashgacha on chalav vacuum products. Is there a difference between chalav vacuum and chalav stam? It's a very interesting question. Chalav vacuum and chalav stam are essentially the same things. There's a difference between yain nesech and stam yenom, as it's called. Yes, there is a difference there. Chalav vacuum, you could say, some would say that there is a difference. The chalav vacuum is milk in which it's highly likely the milk of a non-kosher animal has been mixed in, which you don't know. But if milk of a non-kosher animal has been mixed in, then it's treif, it's not chalav vacuum. But since you don't have a mashgiach, right, then you might say it's chalav vacuum. Chalav stam is milk where the likelihood of milk from a non-kosher animal being mixed in is very, very small. This is what in America, this is what another of Moshe Feinstein's Chuvas, where he said that chalav stam is permitted in America, a place where you have a lot of supervision on the milking process. People are watching it, the inspectors. In those situations, you can rely on the inspection, the government inspection service of the milk. And on the basis of that, you don't need to have a mashgiach there which will make it chalav Yisrael. In the Zohar, Kabbalah talks a lot about the idea of milk without being chalav Yisrael, without having proper supervision, and says, and I think it's even brought in Tanya, that it's matamtem alev ha'moyach. That if you don't have, even if it's just stam chalav, normal milk, the likelihood is very unlikely that there's treif milk. It affects your heart and your mind, right, against Yiddishkeit. So we just one second. So therefore, we're very particular to drink only chalav Yisrael, a place where you have proper hashgacha, where the milk is 100% sure that there's nothing else being mixed in with it. Yes.
The not, cholesterol does have OD on it.
Yeah, I know.
It has it, so how do they give, so if there's Mashiach,
It's exactly what did I say about the OU. The OU says if they can find a heter, they will use it. They have a heter from Rav Moshe Feinstein. He said that you can rely on the authorities in an organized country like that and on their supervision, and you don't need a Jew. That's what they rely on. The D is because it's milchig, it's dairy. But the OU puts a hechsher on it. It's not just the OU in America. A lot of hechsherim in the world will rely on this kula of Rav Moshe Feinstein. And it's, we don't rely on that. Definitely not. Chabad, the Rabbi have been very, very particular about this issue because of the idea that it spiritually affects you. So you really need to have a hashkacha, yes.
Wouldn't most milk be called stomach, not called hot? There's no, they wouldn't mix milk.
I'll tell you something. Many years ago, when I was a young fellow, like my kids call it in the ancient times, I used to in Australia. I used to do used to get the Chol Yisrael. I used to go with my father. We used to go out to a farm twice a week, and we go out to there's a plant a bottling plant. Used to bottle the milk, and would get these big cans. We used to take 120 liters of milk. We'd take these cans and we would put them in the back of our car, clean cans. We'd drive to the farm. We'd get there before the milking started. We'd make sure the lines are empty and clean. And then they'd bring the cows and they'd start milking it. We'd milk it into the cans. We'd take the milk into the cans, put them in the back of our car, drive to the bottling plant. Before they started work, the first milk that went in was our milk. It went into the system. They put it into bottles. They take the bottles, put them in our car, and bring them to the center where people would people who ordered would get Chol Yisrael. That was the system. I did this for a number of years with my father, and then I did it on my own afterwards. My father wasn't doing it any longer. I became very friendly with the farmer. There, we're going years. We're going twice a week, many years. One day I said to him, I said, "Listen, I know you, you know me. I know that you're playing the system somehow. How do you do it? How do you make more out of your farm than what you're supposed to?"
How do you do it for the system?
I knew the guy. I knew he had to be doing it. I said, "I know you've got to be playing this. We're friends, we conversation, you know how it is." I was sure that he wasn't just being, I knew he had to be doing something. Because also the nature of Australian farmers will be exactly that. You've got to do what you can to play the system. What is known as milking the system, excuse the pun. Anyway, so he said to me, "Look, I'll tell you." He says, "You see, I have a few pigs. And I've got my workers here, and every day we milk the pigs." I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, it's simple." He says, "The inspectors come here, and they check, they know exactly how many cows I've got, and what type of cows I've got. Like, different cows give different fat contents in the milk. Jersey cow, for instance, gives 4.5% fat in the milk. Another type of cow gives 3.8%. They know exactly how many cows he's got. They know how much milk each cow gives. Right? So they can work out exactly what percentage of fat will be in his milk. So we'll have an average of, let's say 4% fat in his milk. So they'll take a sample and measure the fat content." Because I know that. He said, "But a pig has got 12.9% fat in its milk. So for every a liter of pig's milk, I can put in 4 liters of water." Now you do that a couple of times a day, right? Then he's got free labor, so he just gets him to milk his pigs, right? He's got free labor there. You're making a good lot of extra money every month. That's what he was doing. The system was clear. They had inspectors coming all the time. The inspectors didn't know about it. Maybe they did, but they couldn't prove it. And that's how they did it. And ever since then, I've been very, very particular about Chol Yisrael. Does that answer your question? I mean, this is something which I personally experienced. It's not, not something I heard from other people. There's a lot of ways of getting around the system, and somebody can, they've got a way of doing it, they will. Yeah.
What's the thing of input in long life milk?
In?
Long life milk.
They don't put anything in. It just goes through a heat process. It's like, you get a can of food, you don't need to keep it under refrigeration, a can. The long life milk is the same thing. It goes through, it's called UHT milk, ultra heat treated. So it goes through a treatment where it heats up the milk to a much higher temperature. When they put it in the carton at a very high temperature, it essentially causes a vacuum within the carton, therefore it doesn't need to be refrigerated until you open it. That's all. It basically kills all bacteria which is in the milk, as distinct from pasteurization, which only kills certain bacteria in the milk. It's cooking, yeah. Wrong. Wrong. Why is this not correct? What are the? I've said a few times. What are the requirements for Bishul Yisrael? Huh? Right. Do you drink milk raw? Huh? Sure you can. You don't have to cook milk. You can drink milk raw. Okay, so therefore it doesn't require Bishul Yisrael. It has to have the three factors in order to require Bishul Yisrael. Yes?
Just sort of on the subject. Why is it that in America the Bishul Yisrael, the Kava Soda milk, for whatever reason, lasts a lot less longer than the style?
Basically, the factors which cause milk to go off quicker are lack of adequate refrigeration. I mean, all milk goes through the same processing. If it's transported a lot, not under adequate refrigeration, it will last less time. Very simple. It could be that they don't have adequate refrigeration for transports.
Is that a preservatives issue like the other one?
There's no difference other than that in any other milk. Okay. I think that's about it. Unless you have any more questions. Yes?
I heard from someone that it's kind of a problem with the bushel wine, and it should be treated just like non-bushel wine with certain temperature differences.
Correct. What you're talking about is that you'll see on a lot of wine bottles, it says, Mevushal al yedei pistur. Or, if you like, Mevushal via pasteurization. Pasteurization heats up the wine to 80 degrees. Bishul requires the wine to be heated to 100 degrees. There are very few wines produced where it has a proper bishul, where it's heated to 100 degrees. And therefore you have to be very careful about it, because if it hasn't had proper bishul, then if a guy touches it, it becomes yain nesef, stam yainam actually. And most wines are not. You have a look on the bottles and you'll see very few have got, some of them will say bishul to 100 degrees, or bishul, yain mevushal as such. But most of them say vushal yedei pistur.
Who holds like that?
That what?
By pasteurization.
People hold that way? Why do they do it at all?
I don't know why they do it at all. Because it doesn't come under the concept of bishul. It's actually a misnomer. You say bishul under pasteurization. Bishul, it's like, it's not bishul.
How they have to clearly label this? Like, if people buy some Mevushal, should I assume it was brought to 100 degrees?
Yeah. If it just says Mevushal, you can ask them. There's very few that do it. Only one or two of the Badatz wines, I believe, have it, and you can't get them too readily.
You can't get what?
You can't get them too readily. It's not readily available.
Alright, what about being mafia with non-negotiable wine around non-shomer mitzvah Jews? How does that compare to around
with wine, it's the same thing. The person who is not shomer Shabbos, with wine is considered the same as a guy.
And even if
If
they
he
watch
touches,
it, they watch it pour it, or just if they touch
if they touch it, if they touch it.
What? Touch the bottle or like?
You what? If they touch the bottle, yeah, it's also considered. So what you do, even if you're in a situation where, for instance, you're at home or something like that, and there are people there who are not showing Shabbos, what I suggest is a simple thing. You get your bottles of wine, you boil them, and then put them back in the bottle.
Boil it?
Yeah.
ruin the wine though.
It's like, hey, you won't have such wine, so what?
So by
It's at the end of the world.
guard from like them.
You what? Well, if you can keep it away, please. But it doesn't always work like that. I'm saying if you're in a situation where you can't do that, you've got to have wine. So, prepare the wine a day before, just boil it, and that's it. Grape juice is the same thing. Grape juice is the same thing, and it doesn't necessarily go through bishul. I don't know. I have to check. Yes.
What am I supposed to do at home? Just in general eating. Like, let's say in America, I don't live in Crown Heights. I'm not so far. Like, I could go to Crown Heights to my shopping, but it would really be But what am I supposed to do about cautious about how much I eat?
Well, there's no kosher shops where you live?
There is, but I'm saying that a lot of stuff that's like OU, like predominantly OU products and things like that.
Basically, Mandel is not really available.
You what?
What?
Basically,
I
Mandel.
know that. I mentioned this last week. I said, look, you can only do what you can do. You've got to be able to live within your limits. If you can only, if that's what you can get, you can't. I don't believe that it's correct to drive your parents nuts. I think that's wrong. I think that you have to do what you can do. If you have chosen to live a life, from life, sometimes you might eat more fruit and vegetables. You might, things which are really problematic. You don't have to eat. Other things what you can. So you're on a bit of a lower level. Make sure it's properly kosher, and that's it. But but you don't have to eat everything, and you have to do what. But you should not drive them crazy. I think they will feel happier with you if they see that you're accepting more of them and that you're not burdening them too much with what you're wanting to do. So you chose it, you take the burden. Don't put it on them. The which?
What about restaurants?
Yeah.
I'm talking kosher restaurants, obviously. But like in the 5 towns, it's not probably not.
Probably not. Is it a good hechsher?
Yeah, about 5 pounds.
Are you only going to eat chabad shchita?
I prefer to.
You prefer to. When you can, that's what you do. But if you can't, if it's a good hechsher, right, it's probably not worthwhile making an issue of it.
You ever go to restaurants though?
Do I ever go to restaurants? Do I ever eat out? I only eat out look, I'll tell you something. In Eretz Yisrael, I only go to Rav Landau establishments. When I go to Chutz La'aretz, like in a week and a half, I'm going to be in the US, out in the back of Michigan, right, for 3 weeks. Okay? Now, what will I eat there? I'll be eating fruit and vegetables. I'll be bringing some things with me from here. That's basically it. That's what I'll eat. I won't eat meat.
They don't have anything there?
Out in the back of Michigan, I'll be in a place called Bad Axe, Michigan. You've never even heard of the place, right? And I guarantee you there is not a place, there's not the based in Sedek of Bad Axe, Michigan. It doesn't exist. So, yeah, Detroit's like 200 miles away.
It's north.
Right, the north, in the thumb.
Yeah, I know that.
There's not a heap of kosher restaurants in the place, and not with Rav Landau's hechsher either. I didn't notice any when I was there last. So what do I do? Whatever, I'll make do. I'll buy. Listen, I'll take a frying pan, right, and a pot which I'll take, and I can buy eggs, and I can buy raw fish, and I can cook it, and I'll have fruit and vegetables, and I'll eat fine, no problem, I'll make pancakes and I won't starve. I'll find what to eat. There won't be a problem. There's fruit and vegetables I can eat as much as I like, right? I can buy flour. I can do it. I'll take an electric fry pan, which I'll have two electric fry pans, one will be milchik and one's fleshig, and between that and what I get, I'll eat just perfect. And if I don't eat meat for 3 weeks, what's going to happen? Anyway, it's going to be the 9 days I'm not going to eat meat, right? So what? In 9 days we manage to eat meat. No, for Shabbos I won't eat meat. What'll be? Nothing will happen. You're allowed not to eat meat on Shabbos.
What was the thing with Bel Shchita?
Yes? What was the answer to the thing with Bel Shchita? I said... That's it. I'm cut off.
You guys want to go to supper if you don't? I don't know any problem. If they want to continue.
No, I actually finished. I said if there's any more questions they can ask, but they're asking.
Anyway, I don't see everybody's going to supper. It's up to you guys. You want to go to supper?
Up to them.